Different views, different views.
I know your story.
From different choose.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Corenna Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
2 Point.
Joining us in studio is Jeff Russell, a brilliant attorney who happens to be my attorney, and one of the founding partners of the successful law firm, Russell Johnson Beaupain. Welcome to the program, Jeff.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yes, Jeff, thank you. Obviously, you're one of our attorneys, too, so I appreciate you coming in.
And actually, we're welcoming back Sheriff Troy Morton. He's joining the discussion today, and we're super excited to have him.
Oh, thanks for having me. I enjoyed this and really appreciate what you folks are doing and getting out to folks some really important information that not only impacts us here in Penobscot County and Bangor, but really across the state and really across the country.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it.
Reportedly, in April, the state may begin to release close to 500 unrepresented defendants, criminal defendants, and then drop charges for those that have been unrepresented for 2 or more months. Jeff, how did we get here?
This actually goes back to colonial America and the formation of this nation when we were British citizens, subjects who were having some issues about people back in the home country who were telling us what to do and what not to do. Now, you probably noticed that at some point we managed to have a little revolution, started up our own gig here and called it the United States of America. And part of that was a bunch of documents about how to run the country. And we refer to that as the United States Constitution, which is still an incredibly relevant, powerful document and how this country is supposed to be run all these years later. So the civics of this are very simple. During the massive amount of problems that we were having when quarreling with our British owners and British minders, we had some real problems with not being allowed to say what we wanted to say and to politically protest against what was going on, to being searched and seized and people put in our homes and no process for how we would be punished or heard for our alleged crimes. This really bothered the people that wound up writing the rules to the country. And they put in that document in the original Bill of Rights and then echoes within the amendments to the Constitution, the idea that if you are accused of something that is going to possibly cost you your liberty, being thrown in prison, your property being taken away from you by the sheriff, or perhaps your life, you needed to have some protections under the Constitution. And one of them is the idea that you don't have to say anything that's going to incriminate yourself, that you have a right to some process. Before we take your life, liberty, or property, we're going to put you through a fair process, or perceived to be fair, whereby your rights, before they are taken, you get a fair opportunity to defend yourself. And if necessary, in front of a group of your peers, right to trial by jury. And then this all comes down to this one kind of all-consuming right that you've got a right to have this within a reasonable period of time. So that's where we started. And it's really super important stuff because I have on several occasions in history of the past 10 years particularly watched as people were deprived of their constitutional right to some form of process because they were a politician being appointed or whatnot. And it struck me that some of these ideas seem to be fading away, but now they are coming back and they've landed in Maine with a solid thump. There was a recent decision by a learned Superior Court justice in the state of Maine who said, okay, I'm going to make a ruling here. And based on the Constitution and all factors considered, yeah, this right just doesn't go away because our courts are jammed, our jails are full, and we're having a bunch of problems. You need to be adjudicated. You need to know what your charges are, and then you have to have some hope of having a trial and within a reasonable period of time. And she issued what I think is a really earth-shattering opinion, but a logical one. Get with it, folks. You've got to do this by this, or these people are going to be released. And that's how we wind up where we are. These are fundamental principles, really super important principles that still are completely relevant and even more important today than they've ever been. And that's what we're trying to do, is balance this all on the head of a pin to solve this problem.
Now, Sheriff, we've spoken with you with your jail being overcrowded for years. You've been working on been getting a new jail for 13 years now? And will alleviate that, I guess, for the interim.
Yeah, so at first blush, some folks may think that law enforcement would be opposed to this decision, and the truth is we're not. This is a constitutional right for somebody to have counsel when they know that their liberty's been taken from them, well pointed out by the attorney. In these cases, it's really complex as to why it's not happening. Unfortunately, like everything, there's too much finger pointing as to whose responsibility it is to get legal counsel to individuals. Why does it not happen in a timely manner? We talked about the backlog of the courts and whatnot. For certain, one thing I know for sure, it's not the sheriff's responsibility to appoint legal counsel. And so that's why we stepped into this lawsuit, received representation on behalf of Maine sheriffs to make sure that the issue wasn't coming back onto the sheriffs. Looking at this from our facility and facilities across the state, last week there were 24 individuals held in our facility. If they were all released that day, the public should be concerned. Criminal justice reform over the past several years has done some really good things, some positive things to help with overcrowding in jails and not incarcerate individuals that are better off served in the community. Some folks just need that hand on the shoulder, right? They can be in programming. They may be at work. Some are just sitting home on the couch. Some we don't even know where they are. So there are different ranges of that, but not everybody has to be held in the jail pending the outcomes of criminal proceedings. In this situations where people are held longer periods of times, sadly, it is often because they've violated bails in the past. They've burnt bridges at treatment homes or facilities that we could release them to. They have serious charges. They have charges in multiple counties. This is far more complex than I think folks realize is to just point an attorney to them. They may have charges in multiple counties. That's not uncommon these days. And so to answer your question, the long way around it is no, it doesn't immediately affect our population. It's very concerning to me because whether it's 10 or 20, to immediately release folks from the jail with these type of pending charges is very concerning. I believe we're going to come to a resolution. There is a hearing on the 7th. There's some work already being done between now and April 7th to talk about processes and how this can be expedited and what checkoffs can be done to show you how broken the systems are. Just 2 years ago, because of our county bringing up the issue that folks are lingering in jail for far too long, the longest serving person in my jail was 883 days, not guilty yet, 883 days. And this is not on a murder charge, right? We know that sometimes a murder case can take a long time. It was Penobscot County and other sheriffs that got together and went to the courts and said, why? Why has processes taken so long? And there's a lot of reasons behind it. During that time, we went to a legislative session. The Judiciary and Criminal Justice Committees looked at this and said, there is no communication between the courts and the jails. The court has no idea who they've held in court. There's no way for them to run that. And so 2 sessions ago, we developed a statute that says the jails every 2 weeks will email their entire list of inmates to the court, and then they can kind of go through those and they'll respond to us. It's kind of like a checklist to, is this on the prosecutor? Is this on the defense? Is it on the individual themselves? What's holding this up? Is there a mental health evaluation being done, a medical evaluation? What's holding this case up? And so that was a positive change, but it also showed you there was no connection as to who was being held. We're finding the same things happening with those that don't have court-appointed attorneys. And so again, through this process, Corenna, much what you said, what's the impact on Penobscot County? Number one, I'm very concerned that we're releasing folks that should not be immediately released without a good plan. They've already posed or shown that they've posed danger to the public. They may be in a bad position if they're simply released only to violate again and come right back into the jail again. That's not healthy for them. That's not healthy for our communities. But we can do better and we should do better. I think that these processes will start to work out.
So, Jeff, what do you think about it? Is there not enough lawyers or not enough judges?
That's a lot like Troy says. It's a complex problem. And we have seen a response from the judiciary that he talked about in trying to work the processes so that we're getting people in front of a judge faster. We're using modern communications to do so that they at least get that initial arraignment, know the charges against them and what they're facing, and hopefully have an attorney assigned to them who can help them make decisions about what they need to do next to defend themselves and assist in that kind of a defense and provide that kind of defense, which goes to the issue of the lawyers, of which I am one. Again, we'll go back in time a little bit because this problem is not new, and it's been a really, really big topic in the legal and the judiciary commission for years now. The issue becomes this. When I was starting out in the early 90s, what you did to get experience is you went down to the court and served as the lawyer of the day, and or you made that the focus of your practice, and you could pick up a lot of clients, take care of them, and get reimbursed by the state. Enough so that there are several lawyers out there who are now, old graybeards like me, who made a very good living for many years doing that. Then things changed. It's fair to say that now, all these years later, the cost of providing our services have gone up exponentially, particularly when it comes to the risk that you take on when representing clients that have been accused of criminal infractions up through murder. You need to be competent. You need to be doing this all the time, because at a minimum, if you're not successful in the case, which you're not going to be at least half of the time, you're going to be blamed by your client, and they are going to file official complaints against you and whatnot. So the insurance to do this has gone up quite a bit. That's one of the things they ask us every year. How many criminal cases are you doing where you're representing indigent clients who do not have the money to pay you over the threshold to represent them? There are issues with that. The other thing is that just as a practical matter, a lot of people have realized that in order to run a law firm or operate a practice, you got to make X dollars per hour just to cover the cost of what you provide. You're employing people, you're renting a building or owning a building, you have a number of third-party vendors that you need to keep very happy. And it comes down to basic economics that the money offered by the state long ago had been eclipsed by the cost of providing for the service. So essentially, we're volunteering our efforts a lot of the time when we're helping out a criminal defendant. And I've done some, and all the members of my firm have done some. But right now, I only have 2 people in the firm that are qualified to do it. We've all done this, but it's a loss leader. And if you do too much of it, you can fall behind and put your firm in economic danger. And that begs the question, where do we go next? There are still people serving as lawyer of the day and picking up the clients. There was an adjustment to the rate. I still don't think it's enough. I personally like the move towards a professional organization that is a counter to the prosecutor's office and is a true public defender's office. In Penobscot County, we've got that going, but it's a slow process and struggle to attract, retain, keep, and grow something like that. And not that that's because of what it is doing. It's the same for a lot of law firms, even attracting new, younger attorneys, growing a firm, getting people to come and stay, to practice. It's difficult. Maine is a difficult place to compete for that kind of talent and the people we need. And we're seeing it in the law community. We're seeing it in the accounting community. We're seeing it in the medical community. It's all across the spectrum. And that begs a lot of bigger issues about the competitiveness of being and working in Maine. It's something we're keenly aware of, and it's something that we're going to continue to address. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is with regards to really promoting a public defender's office of professionals who do nothing but criminal law every day. I'm the last person you want out doing criminal law. Why? Other than the theory of a lot of the constitutional principles involved with defending a criminal thing, I'm not up on the current Fourth Amendment cases. I'm not up on all of the stuff that needs in the procedure, particularly on all the variations of criminal law. And that's true, I think, with any lawyer that does anything. You develop areas where you are particularly skilled, but increasingly law practice is becoming bifurcated that way, because if you go outside of your zone and mess something up, you're going to be having a discussion with the Board of Bar Overseers as well as a possible malpractice complaint.
Before you guys came here, we were talking to Sean Moody about businesses struggling here in the state of Maine with the high electric bill, especially the public policy and some of the other fees that have gone up. So I can imagine a lawyer firm with all these increases in your budget, then go out and to take a lesser paying job, which is what that would be. The state seems to spend a lot of money on a lot of things. I would think that they would maybe invest a little bit more into these attorneys to get some of these cases up and running and out.
Yeah, it's a priority. I think there should be a priority for the state to be putting money in the hands of a public defender's office to be competitive, to be able to attract that talent, to be able to do things. Personally, I get a little frustrated when I see the state chasing rainbows of sort by pursuing, and I know how much it takes to put on a case.
Right.
It's expensive. Yes. Pursuing really, really not very credible claims, for example, the 72-hour waiting period case, where the state of Maine got quite a rebuke from a sitting federal court judge as to, you're really stretching it here, people. But yet the state keeps moving right along. Or other efforts where we we wind up in lawsuits about whether or not my right to vote for or against Donald Trump should be in existence because somebody has stepped up and said, no, he can't be on the ballot because I think this. These kind of things really detract from the bigger issues that Maine is facing, or perhaps are a symptom of it, because it is very difficult for a business. I know that in the last couple of years, we have had to devote an extraordinary amount of time and staff time to dealing with unilateral legislative pronouncements that come down, requiring us, for example, to set aside money for people who aren't saving for retirement, various adjustments to the Family Leave Acts, to paid time off, all of that. It's not that I'm in favor of it or against it. I just think there is no appreciation, as Sean would probably tell you, of the administrative burden and cost on a company that at the end of the day has to have a cash flow that produces a net profit to stay in existence.
And Troy, catching that person who just got released and the same guy that catches him because he does it again, obviously, it's got to be tough on morale. When you put somebody away and next thing you know, they're released back into the community.
Yeah, that's part of looking at the criminal justice reform. There was a lot of how do we divert certain cases? How do we better utilize the bail system, probation system? I was a bit surprised this week. As you know, I represent the Maine Sheriff's Association as their vice president and legislative policy person. I've been in front of judiciary and criminal justice, and neither group at that time had the statistics that showed us how many bail violations and probation violations we had last year. And I think that's a really important stat. If we're going to use the thought process that we can bail folks out, maybe they're better off served in the community, we want to make sure that those assessments, those conditions that we put in place are going to keep people safe. And for the individual themselves, you can't put somebody out on a condition you know they're going to violate. They're just asking for trouble. Now they have more charges for violations than they do the original charge that they were ever arrested. Again, I think Jeff pointed out that there is so many steps in this process that need to be worked out. I hope that they look at what does indigent mean today compared to years ago. Somebody brought this forward when they said the cost of commissary for the jail is too much money for phone calls from the jail. And yet I had an individual in our jail with $4,000 on his account in the jail. So I hope that we dig into those type of things. If we're going to open this thing up, let's open it up and look at all of it. I agree with Jeff as well. The public defender thing is probably a good investment. It makes sense to have people that specialize in that. Corenna, going back to the jail, how does this affect the jail and the need for a new jail? Penobscot County, Androscoggin County, Franklin, and I think Oxford. Now I'm hearing it from Aroostook. These overcrowded jails are a serious problem. I have 84 individuals today that are boarded out in 3 different jails somewhere else. So if we do have an attorney appointed today on a video arraignment and I ship them out tomorrow, how is the attorney going to communicate with them down in Westcasset, down in Madison, or somewhere else? So for Penobscot, it continues to be an issue. It's a greater issue of the physical plant simply falling apart. It's not a matter of, I continue to hear this all the time, is you want to put more people in jail. No, we want to control the population that we have in a safe, humane way that's also cost effective to the taxpayers, because we got to remember the county jail's coming straight out of taxpayers.
Well, speaking of taxes and expenses, I'm sure it's not in your budget to now release huge blocks of defendants. There has to be a process and a cost to that. Are you going to need to bring in more personnel to make that happen? 22 on the same day, I would think that would be a lot of work.
You know, it's interesting that, again, is part of the process that we're concerned about. We've been watching this and working with it over the years. We took one of our very last classrooms a couple of years ago because the Chief Justice said, I need you to have some more video court area. So I took one of my very small last programming areas and turned it into 3 video court areas, used for video court, used for mental health evaluations that they could do mental health evaluations. So we've turned it into that area to work through that. But when we did that, there were still paperwork processes that needed to be completed that were transferred from the court to correctional staff. So I've taken some of my correctional staff and had to turn them into clerks, essentially, to fill out bail bonds that have been directed by a judge and whatnot. We want to be part of the process. We don't want to hamper folks getting out. I don't think that this is going to be an all rush thing, right? That it all happens at once. This is going to be, once it's in place, there's going to be evaluations. We're doing this 3 days a week right now, which is incredibly costful to us. We're trying not to board people out, but sometimes I have no choice. If I have co-defendants, if I have other reasons why an individual cannot stay in our facility because we don't have the space and they're moved with no legal counsel, I have to bring them back every couple of days so that they're in front of a judge to see if they can get court appointment. So once this is kind of ironed out and we get through I think that there's somewhere around 500 or so in the state, I bet That number is a lot less than that now. I think that's what the ruling said. I'm one of the largest jails in the state, and we only have 24. So I find it hard to believe that number is 500 or 700 now. I'm sure it's less than that. But whatever the number is, 300, 400, it still needs to be addressed. It won't happen all at once. It's going to take a little time. And then as it starts to go, it will be easier to manage because you're going to have one or two every few days.
Speaking of that jail, and I know when we had you on last time, we were talking about that. Are you any further ahead?
Well, I'm pleased that we had a short presentation by an out-of-state firm that's working with a local firm here to talk together how they can work collaboratively on looking at a design. I was super excited. I'm not sure if I was able to share this the last time, but I had gone to Oklahoma. I'm on the board for the National Sheriff's Association. Went to Oklahoma and actually met a design firm out there that comes with a totally different mindset than we've seen anything here in New England, let alone Maine. For a million reasons, it's a great, really good approach. This is what we're asking county jails to be. And when I keep talking about this in the public, I relay it to the hospitals because folks understand the hospital system. The county jail is like the emergency room. When you look at the emergency room, it's chaos at times, right? It's controlled chaos. People coming in at all times of the day for different needs, and you're trying to stabilize people, where a prison system is not that. It's like the 5th floor of the hospital. You've been stabilized, you've been in the hospital for a while, you've had your treatment, now you're stabilized, and maybe there's some long-term care. And that's what the state prison system does. Unfortunately, you saw these standards that I showed you earlier.
Yes.
Sometimes the state tries to look and say the county jails and the prisons are really the same thing, and they're absolutely not. The ER, emergency department, emergency room, is not the same thing as any of the upper floors of those hospitals. So I do hope that this discussion of this new concept of a county jail on how we provide a safe and humane facility, not only for the inmates, but for my staff, for our vendors, our mental health and medical vendors that come in, our MAT, medical assisted treatment, our religious services, educational programming. I'm open to having all of that in correctional facilities, but you need a facility that needs to work for us to do that. It costs us a tremendous amount of money. I watched how much staff that it took to run the facility that was larger than mine in Indiana. When I went out and toured 2 correctional facilities, they did it with half the staff. It's just a different design.
Yeah, I would think, building a new jail would also probably save us some cost versus outsourcing so many of your people that are incarcerated.
Yeah, and again, I keep sharing this, and I kind of have a 3-approach presentation. I have to make sure that folks know that the county jail is critical to make sure that we're providing public safety first. As you go back in history, what is the reason for the county jail? It was to hold people that were immediate danger to the public and to ensure that they made their first court appearance. It wasn't designed to hold or continue to hold for long periods of times individuals that were sentenced or held for 883 days. That wasn't the intent. We weren't programming facilities. That continued to change over the years. So I speak to the public. From the city of Brewer, we had an incident in Brewer where a gentleman was working in a convenience store overnight, older gentleman doing his job, subsidizing that retirement, working in an overnight shift in a small convenience store, and an individual comes in out on 18 conditions of bail and brutally assaults him. This kid shouldn't have been out.
No.
This kid should not have been out of jail.
However, wouldn't he be on the list of being released?
Maybe right. So if he didn't get an attorney, but we have to remember that a lot of these folks, they are getting attorneys and they're getting them quickly. So that's not always the case. It's just how quickly can we get them attorneys? I think the other thing to this ruling is this is going to force it to happen, right? This probably could have just kind of gone along, and at some point somebody's going to be forced to. So again, on the jail part, there's the public safety part. And then there's the folks in the community that want to make sure that we're providing treatment and programming. And I got to have a facility to do that. If you don't care about either of those two, maybe it's just the money. Right now, property taxpayers, I keep saying property taxpayers, that's where the county money's coming from, property taxpayers, that we are spending $2.5 million renting cells or essentially paying for another county's jail somewhere else.
Right.
Just to move 80 of our inmates somewhere else. I'm not a mathematician. You're a much better businessman than I'd ever be. But I'm pretty certain $2.5 million will pay for the bond or nearly pay for the bond for a new facility here in Penobscot County. So we could save the taxpayers of Penobscot County the funds.
Well, that would take common sense.
Right.
Right, Jeff?
Common sense.
So, Jeff, the question to you is, I agree having in-house counsel down there at the courthouse rather than, because I'm sure that the courthouse, if you have 4 or 5 different firms that are representing some of these people, got to send the checks out and everything else to every law firm. So if you had an in-house attorney there representing these people, I would have to think that would save the city money.
Well, I think it saves money all the way around. Right now, we have an excellent building here. We have a judiciary that has been extremely flexible in allowing alternative methods of making sure that they get counted counsel. So certainly we're geared up to do this, and we need to do a pivot from begging people to do it to paying them good money.
Correct.
Have a good team in each county that has their own place, their own space, and is working in that court daily to help people get the representation to provide that representation because they are unable to purchase that representation themselves.
Right.
And that is pretty important all the way around. I think that Sheriff Morton does a great job of showing the interconnectedness of this. You wouldn't think we'd care about a jail. We care a lot about a jail. I've had experience recently over the past couple of years with 2 different jail systems dealing with a matter that were county jail systems that were completely different. And I think certainly what he envisions in terms of what a jail should look like and a more enlightened approach to managing people in what we've developed for the more modern way of doing this is the way to go here. And I'm hopeful that Penobscot County will be moving rapidly in that direction to bring that, not just the cost in line, but the overall flow of how somebody is managed going through this system. It's going to take a team. It's going to take the judiciary, law enforcement, and the defense lawyer bar, which again, I think needs to be professionalized and given some status akin to the prosecutor's office. We have that going on here now, the nascent ability, the startup of that, and the program is here right now in Penobscot County. I'm hopeful that the lawyers and the judiciary and the legislature and anybody else that is interested is going to work to help make that even more competitive and think out of the box about how do you get people to come and do it. Because certainly there are a lot of people out there who get into law because of an idea that they want to make sure that somebody doesn't simply get pushed through a process without knowing their rights and their obligations to society when they are accused of a crime and alleged to have done something.
Jeff, how many are we looking at here? Sheriff said it's not everyone. There are criminal defendants that do have legal representation.
Yes.
What do you think the percentage is? Are we talking 10%, 25%? Where are we at?
I don't have a good fix on what the percentage is. I do know that in my firm, if a client calls up and says that little Jane or little Johnny has gotten a speeding ticket for doing 112 miles an hour on the interstate, we step in and we handle those kind of cases. They also require a fair amount of cash coming over the transom to get involved in this because the paperwork, again, it's a lot of it. Bangor has 2 or 3 firms that have people that do a tremendous amount of paid criminal work, higher end stuff where somebody can come in the door or the person, well, actually I shouldn't say higher end stuff. I'm just saying across the spectrum, somebody's got the money to deal with everything from a parking ticket to being accused of burglary or something like that. So you do have that market met here. Bangor also has 2 people that have done a tremendous amount of work in high profile crimes, the murders and other things like that. And they do a great job. That's a thankless task. They absolutely go in there and make sure that person gets a defense, make sure that they get every defense they can think of, because that's what this system is about. This is what we do. These constitutional rights, they all have the same weight, and you shouldn't be afforded more than one or less than the other. And that's been a really big theme that has been coming back in both criminal and civil cases before the United States Supreme Court, reminding people about constitutional rights. And from a prosecuting and a defending standpoint, that's what it's about. That making sure that we get equal treatment here. We're trying to put you in jail. We're trying to keep you out of jail. That's a crude way of saying that defense and prosecution need to be on the same playing field with similar resources and similar knowledge and similar experience and the ability to do this. That's what we need. And my concern is looking to see where we're going to get that next group of talent from and convince them to make that dedication to a nascent defense office of public defenders that we have going here in Penobscot County. Bring it to the level of professionalism, competence that it has to be able to do that and really, truly be able to represent people who cannot afford a lawyer. You can't patchwork this thing along. Everybody means well, but it does fall short, not because somebody's doing something bad or wrong. It's just the nature of the system.
Jeff made a great point about these cases are complex. You know, when I started 30-something years ago, I know it's hard to believe, right? But 30-something years ago when I started this, and I looked at our jail that had OUI mom, bad check dad, the night hunting uncle, these are some cases that new attorneys could probably manage, right? They're not real complex. They're pretty straightforward. Here's your rights. And we had a lot of attorneys that could stay in that lane. There are some really difficult cases that are being brought. The statutes are forever changing. And just as Jeff said, you've got to be on top of being prepared to answer these questions and understand it. Think about this process. process. The day where an attorney could walk in with discovery, which is the information shared by the prosecutor, the inmate, the defendant who's sitting in jail may not have that. The attorney would come in, or somebody from the firm would come in and sit down with them, and they'd have 5 or 6 or 7 pieces of paper to say, here's the police report, here's the OUI test, and what do you think? They're showing them the discovery, the case. Today, they're coming in with files far larger than this, with the reports, the analysts that's taken place, all of these pieces. It takes a tremendous amount of time for an attorney just to come in and spend with an inmate at the facility, so they can't do that. So they've asked us, in a jail that was built before the World Wide Web was even online, to come in and make sure that we can do this through digital format in the jail.
Oh, wow.
Can we give inmates thumb drives, laptop computers, all of these things? You know, I joked with some of my local attorneys just 6 months ago. We had a rash of, we received a tip from an inmate who said, hey, you got to pay a little more attention to the legal mail. So there, in one of these stands, it tells us how we can read mail. So if mail comes in from Troy Morton to my kid who's in jail, the officers open it up like they do all the mail. They can look through it. They're not reading it, but they're looking through and make sure there's nothing on it. Legal envelope comes in and says local attorney, the name on it to the inmate. That has to be opened in front of the inmate. Inmates will quickly say, you're looking at my stuff, you're reading it. And so the officers sometimes will just hand it over. Well, we had a little rash about 6 months ago that a couple local attorneys' names were on the front of the envelope. So they just assumed it was real legal mail. It came in and it looked like discovery. But on page 12,
I can imagine.
it was taped, completely taped on page 12 or so with Suboxone in the middle of it. Obviously, it didn't come from an attorney.
Right.
But this is the thought process that goes on. And so can you imagine the processes? I don't think folks truly understand what we're challenged with. This is not just as simple as just do this and just do this and let them do this. And how do you let them make phone calls? And even though technology has helped us, it's really complex, you know, not to keep pounding us. I think a facility helps some of it, doesn't fix it all. I was impressed down in Indiana. They had a judge's chambers at the jail.
So quicker process.
Quicker process.
Yeah.
When we started video arraignment almost 10 years ago, there was a thought process that prosecutors could come into the jail. We could do this in the jail. We actually set up a classroom. You see some of it today when they're doing video arraignments in the background. We took that classroom, we built it into a little courtroom. And it didn't take very long for prosecutors and judges and clerical staff from the courts to say, there's no way in heck we're coming into the jail again. And so that ended quickly.
Tell us a little bit about your book that you brought in.
Almost like an attorney, right? I'm always prepared, I think.
I think
right?
you're good to go.
I got
Yeah,
my
because you brought
good
more
to
notes
go.
than Jeff did,
I'm
so
telling you,
that's why
It's all
I
in
brought
his
it
head.
up. Yeah.
You know, so running the county jail is much more complex than folks think. And so just in front of me, yesterday we received the new standards for county jails and regional jails. There's only one regional jail in the state. That was 2 counties that merged together and made a county jail. So there are 15 county jails technically in the state. And the state of Maine Department of Corrections actually puts out our standards that tell us how to run a county jail. Now, I joke all the time about saying, well, the state's telling me how to run my jail, and this is crazy. We need standards, right? We saw what happened when there was some talk about privatization of jails throughout the country, and we didn't see it up here, but we did see some out-of-state firms trying to do private transportations.
Right.
And it was crazy. They'd show up at our jail in the middle of the night, a private firm. They'd had individuals in their vans for days and without showers and this and that, and because there's no standards.
Right.
And so they would show up at a county jail like, can our people sleep for a day? Or, you know, and his private companies. Anyhow, we don't see that anymore. These standards are important, but these standards cost taxpayers a lot of money. We've just had a bunch of new standards come out. There are some that absolutely make sense and that we agreed with. And there are some, while they may make sense, you have to realize that this is shifting the burdens onto county jails that are that emergency department that are already doing a million things. And now you also want us to do bails, and you want us to be a courtroom, and you want us to be a medical facility. If you saw the condition of individuals that are brought into our jail, so about 4,000 admissions a year to the Penobscot County Jail, that's how many individuals are coming through the door to new arrest. Local law enforcement, by the way, have done a tremendous job. We need to stop telling or saying that cops need more training and they need to divert more people. The answer to that question is divert them to where? Show me the place that I can just drive up and drop them off for a mental health evaluation. There's 2 places, the hospital or the jail.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's the problem. The detox facilities, the same thing, where I just went down and testified on behalf of Maine sheriffs to say, I think it was Senator Baldacci's bill, to increase some of the Maine Care funding for our detox centers because we need detox centers online. Where will a law enforcement officer divert somebody to when you can't go into a detox center in the middle of the night? A lot of our resources, I believe, we are very resource rich in this area. But you know when we're resource rich? 8 to 4, Monday through Friday.
Right.
And people that are in crisis don't work on a time and a schedule. And that moment that they're willing to go get help, you got to have somebody there. And I know that's difficult. It's hard to be all to all, but we need those services available to people when they're willing to go and when loved ones are willing to divert them, or law enforcement wants to divert them, or an ambulance. Coming to the jails is tough. I appreciate you bringing up the standards. As much as I joke about them, this does drive our cost. There's so many in here, from the size of my trash cans to how much light comes in the building to the square footage. So one of the newest changes to these standards says I've got to go into my jail now. There's a state rated capacity, much like your building or any conference room has a rated capacity.
Right.
My jail has a rated capacity that was done by the state. They came in, they audited the building, they measure walls, they look at how many chairs you have, all of these things. We had a state rated capacity of 157, although the building was built for 136. There were a few modifications. I'm certain that this new standard, it says this has to be all redone. Oh, by the way, the state's not going to do it anymore. The county needs to go out and
Which
pay to
taxpayers?
have this done. Right. I'll be shocked if we meet the 157. It's going to be less, which means I've got to push more people out the door to board them out. And so these are things that cost, and they cost a considerable amount of money to property taxpayers.
'Cause that looks like about 100 pages there.
There are
At least.
243 standards.
Yeah.
And I'll send this out to you because I know Saturday night you've got nothing
Yes.
to do. You're going to read through
Well,
the
last Saturday I
mandatories.
went through all of the current bills of the state legislature. I read every single one.
There's some good stuff still happening in legislature. As much as I pick on what happens in Augusta, I think there are good-hearted, good-minded folks that go down there that want to represent our state. And I am disappointed to see that we're still so divided on parties that we sometimes we can't get together. I will tell you that just this week I was very proud of some legislators from our county because I was able to reach out to them with a bill that impacted us directly here. And I reached out to one side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle and explained that this is an issue for us. And while you're representing the whole state, we got to take care of us too. They voted together.
That's great.
And these are impacts that we can actually have. And as much as I'd like to be back out on the road instead of Augusta, I was joking with Dave about that earlier. I think as sheriff in my leadership role that I am with the Maine sheriffs or Penobscot County, that it's vital that I am under the dome with our other sheriffs to make sure that we are addressing statutes that are coming through, particularly the processes, protecting people's rights, be conscious of the processes, and be fiscally responsible while we're doing it.
Before we let you go, Jeff, is there anything in Penobscot County as a county that we should be taking a look at?
Well, certainly, and I think that Troy hints at it. A great deal here is that this is a county center. It's a city that attracts a lot of people. We have a lot of issues. From the lawyer perspective, one of the greatest frustrations is when you get a call from a client in the middle of the night and, their son, unfortunately, daughter has had an encounter with drugs and needs help right now. And Troy mentioned that, we're a grade 8 to 4 city. We really are. But beyond that, we don't have anything. One of my dreams for the county is coordination of a place where, other than an emergency room, but more or less a multi-purpose assessment place where any time of day somebody can be taken there by law enforcement or a parent and get a quick assessment of what that person needs, even if they are going to be going to the jail shortly thereafter, so that we've got a course of action to help a homeless person, to help somebody who's just overdosed on drugs, to set aside anything in our heads that say it's your own dang fault, but to get the problem addressed because it affects all of us. I was someplace the other day and thinking about family members and some of the struggles they have in getting their businesses going, and the occasional month where the big check didn't come in and they're scraping rent and things like that. And I looked, and going up the street out by the mall was this kid who looked to be about my son's age with a wheelbarrow with everything he owns in it. It just begs the question, why? Why can't we actually get them in a pipeline for some help and a place to stay and maybe a little hope for a better day, doing something other than going up the side of the road with a wheelbarrow with all of your earthly possessions in Bangor, Maine in 2025?
I really appreciate Corenna and Dave, both of you, to do this. Jeff, obviously, the most important thing is that we have these conversations and we have to look underneath it a little bit, right? So there's some preconceived thoughts, right? That everybody that's a criminal is a bad person. That's not always the case. But on the flip side of that, we're not providing enough. We provide an awful lot of services that people don't take advantage of. And so it's really complex. It's a really complex issue. We've got to have open, honest conversations, stop being stuck in party lines sometimes and stop being stuck in that's how we've done it forever. We have to get out of that if we want to make change, if we want this to keep going. You folks have been around here for a long time too. And this is still the best place to live and grow a family and have a business, but it is starting to slide, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned earlier about how much it costs to run a business in this area. These are the things that, even though I'm in the law enforcement world, I spend a lot of time with folks at the chamber, and I listen to businesses. I'm learning. I feel like I am a business, right? I think I'm the biggest mental health detox hospital that there is in Bangor. And it's, that's what we're facing. I sat with the city council through their housing. I'm like, why did they ask me to come to housing? But wow, it really made sense. I'm a huge part of the housing world. And what is the housing problem? And is that some of our problems that we don't have low income housing? But yet when we provided it during the COVID thing and we had a plan and they spent some money and developed some places for people to go, it turned into a mess.
Right.
We had some real problems in some of those places. People took advantage of it. There was the people that it worked really well for because on paper it sounded great. And then there were people that turned them into drug houses and more criminal activity than we had out on the street. So it's complex. I love the discussions. I appreciate you guys willing to do that. I still believe that this county and particularly this city is trying to do the right things. We're trying to do it from all angles, which is important, and not just be one-sided about this. But it's much more complex than people realize, and we can't keep just doing what we're doing. It's not getting better.
Right. It's not working. That's for sure. And I think Corenna said it best. It's mostly common sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We just need to bring back common sense and the conversations
Right.
with everyone. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. It doesn't matter.
I mean, that's why we started this podcast, is to try to educate people and get different views. Obviously, that's what this is all about.
Dig a little deeper.
Right.
Yeah.
I go back to what I said about the jail, and it really struck me because I saw two new members of the judiciary who I've not been in front of before, and they may even be, freshman legislators. And when I mentioned county jail and emergency room, one of the ladies looked at me, and I could tell her wheels were spinning. Like, okay, I can start to put this together. I've been to the emergency room. I know what you're talking about. Never been in the county jail. And so when you start to share that, just as you just said, Dave, is we dig down and we start to show what's behind the scenes and under the ground. It's helpful to make long-term decisions of where we're going.
I used to work at the emergency department, and I've visited your jail, and I completely see what you're saying. Absolutely.
You toured the jail. You didn't come in.
Okay, but thank you for that clarification.
I just want we got legal counsel here. We've got,
Well, Jeff
it was a tour.
represents both of us in both of our companies.
Yeah, I haven't had a involuntary ride in a police car in quite a while, and I'd like to
Keep it that way.
repeat the experience from my troubled youth, and we'll proceed merrily forward, focusing on productive activities.
Well, the sheriff does ride-alongs,
I would actually like to go on a ride-along again. I haven't been on one for a long time. I had a family member that worked in government and used to get a ride every day to work with the state trooper, and I always thought
Every
that was
day?
a lot of fun. Every day, yep.
Now, speaking of ride-alongs, didn't Corenna get a ride-along with you on your airplane?
That's right.
was
Corenna's
so
going to be
fun.
an airline pilot in her next career.
No kidding.
She can certainly fly an airplane and does a great job.
He let me take over, and
doing a thing.
I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. I didn't land it, obviously.
Landing is important. Really.
Yeah. It's public key.
Very, very important. I think this will be my 46th year or 47th year or something like that.
Really?
Airplane.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it was so fun, and no one else could get me up in, what was it, a Cessna?
You were actually in a 1947 Piper Cub special, which is about as authentic as it gets.
Yeah. You still have it?
Oh yes. That one they can't take away from me. Although my daughter said she was going to take the keys away at some point, and I said it doesn't have keys. It doesn't even have a starter.
Do you still have to spin it like that?
Yeah, it has what's known as a Hemingway starter. One slip and it's farewell to arms.
Yeah.
You literally have to flip the propeller to make it go. It's pretty easy to do, and it saves on weight, and it is about as authentic as it gets. And it certainly gets attention occasionally when people realize that you're not turning a key to make the engine go around, that you actually stand out there and turn the propeller with your hand, and the engine starts up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do that again sometime.
We should. We're not doing it enough, and we need to be able to get out and take a little more time off.
We're going to be shooting with the sheriff soon.
I'm super excited about that. We really appreciate you guys being involved in that. I think the Pine Tree Camp was beyond excited about how that went.
Great event.
What was the total raised?
For a shoot with the sheriff, it was over $4,000.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I got to get in on that at some point.
Yeah,
I know.
And our intent was to make sure there's so much discussion about firearms laws and both sides of the argument, bad guns, good guns, and this and that. And I'm a responsible gun owner. And I think that it's important important that we have responsible laws, that people are responsible, that we have safe gun ownership. I've had some, real critics of the Second Amendment come to me and say, you're the Second Amendment sheriff, right? Correct? And I said, yes, you have a right to have it, but that doesn't mean you should.
Correct.
If you're not safe, you're not comfortable with a firearm, you shouldn't have it. I want to make sure that people are educated and safe with their firearms and understand the laws, and more importantly, that they know how to handle a firearm. So I'm looking forward to having you come over. We're going to have a great time.
We can't wait.
We got a great vendor that's got an incredible place over in Holden. Maine Military is going to have us in indoor range. And
I was wondering where. Oh, good.
it's
I've been in there
exciting.
before a few times.
Yeah.
A couple of the guys from the TAC team might come over. And
Oh, even better.
Fun.
yeah, you're going to have a good time.
I
Can't
appreciate
wait.
that.
Well, thank you both
Yeah,
so
thank
much
you.
for coming in.
Yeah.
And last minute, we love
Yeah,
it.
Troy, thank you. I know that you were on your way to Augusta and we caught you in
We
time.
saved him.
Yeah.
Saved me.
No,
Thank you. And-
Our pleasure. It's a great honor.
And
a
Jeff,
great
I know
experience.
you're very busy, and thank you very much.
Oh,
I do
anytime.
appreciate it.
Anytime. Anything we can do to get the word out.
Appreciate it.
Different views. Different views.
I know your story.
From different choose.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Corenna Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
2 Point.